My name is Sarah Jenkins. I am 31 years old. 2 weeks ago, I spent almost $500 on my own birthday meal just to sit quietly while my whole family took turns insulting me like it was a competitive sport. They chose the venue right after I agreed to pay. A franchise steakhouse in a retail strip. Nothing glamorous, but pricey enough that it stung when I gave the waiter my card. From the second we took our seats, they ensured I knew exactly how pathetic they considered me. My mother asked how tracking lost packages was going at my office. Before I could even respond, she announced to the table that whenever folks at her country club ask about my career, she claims I work in supply chain management. Because admitting I locate missing freight all day sounds depressing, my father interrupted to boast that one of my cousins just bought her second duplex up north. She is only 27, he remarked while staring directly into my eyes. He then noted how wonderful it must be to avoid renting a cramped garage apartment from an old man at my age. My brother laughed that at least I avoid maintaining a real property since I struggle to keep a basic checking account afloat. My sister leaned over the appetizer platter, grabbed my unlocked phone, opened my financial app with zero permission, and displayed the screen so everyone could view the negative $64 to my name. She giggled and suggested somebody snap a photo because nobody else arrives at their own celebration completely penniless. I remained silent while my aunt compared me to a local kid who owned a new electric vehicle and a condominium. My brother recalled how my school instructors always labeled me a prodigy. He pointed his steak knife at my face and declared that now I am simply this. Finally, my father rose from his chair, raised his drink, and announced he wished to deliver a celebratory speech. I felt deep down it would never be something you remember fondly, yet I remained entirely unprepared for the sentence he actually delivered. Before revealing his exact phrasing and the events following my departure, tell me your current time and location. I am fascinated to learn how widely this narrative might spread. So here is what my father truly proclaimed with his cocktail hovering directly above my slice of cheesecake. He cleared his throat, glanced at everyone beside me, and stated to our ultimate failure, may she eventually marry a wealthy guy who keeps her from moving back into our house. He chuckled at his own joke while my mother and siblings tapped their drinks together above my head as if it were the most hilarious comedy routine imaginable. Nobody paused. Nobody winced. Even my cousin participated. I just sat frozen with my hands folded my utensils completely, unused, feeling my face burn, while the couple at the adjacent booth actively pretended not to look. My mother took a swallow and casually mentioned that she and my father had recently revised their estate plans. We agreed our assets will pass to the children who understand money, she muttered to her salad. Sarah would just waste it all on takeout and basic utilities. My brother grinned and claimed that finally I possessed some real incentive. My sister bumped my shoulder and instructed me to stop acting so fragile. She called it necessary tough love. And she asked if I truly planned to pout when everyone was simply attempting to guide me. I avoided arguing. I avoided crying. I never snatched my device or stormed away. I simply requested the bill from our waiter. When the leather booklet arrived, my father patted his jacket as if preparing to retrieve his cash. He quickly dropped his hands and stated, "You have this covered right, birthday girl." The final sum, including gratuity, landed just above $500. My payment succeeded merely because I used a high-interest credit line, not the drained bank balance they had recently circulated, like a shared visual aid. Outside in the chili lot, everyone instantly reverted to their normal behavior. My mother embraced me and promised to see me for the holiday gatherings. My brother punched my arm playfully. My sister inquired if I needed the group picture she captured immediately following the speech. Nobody offered apologies. Nobody asked about my feelings. I drove straight back to the garage apartment I leased from a retired veteran across the city, parked and waited inside my silent vehicle until the windshield completely misted. I continuously heard that specific label failure echoing internally like my brand new legal designation. Upon finally entering my room, I executed 2 tasks. I unlocked my computer and accessed 3 portals that had silently dictated my existence for years. Then I dialed 3 separate numbers, one to a lending bank across the country, one to a vehicle financing firm, and one to the property owner next door. When I fell asleep hours later, their entire reality remained entirely undisturbed. They were definitely still chuckling at their cruel jokes, entirely oblivious that I had permanently severed their singular financial lifeline. The ironic truth is my relatives constantly spoke as if I were the anchor dragging them down, the late bloomer who never truly succeeded. Yet reviewing my financial records over the past 6 years proves I was solely preventing their total collapse. While they mocked my negative $64 during dinner, they remained blissfully ignorant that my funds sit constantly depleted because, since turning 25, roughly $1,000 exits my wages monthly to settle their debts. My position handling logistics actually pays decently for my area, around $45,000 annually, but it offers zero endless wealth. When my father saw his landscaping firm losing clients, he contacted me claiming they lacked sufficient funds for the house and asked if I could assist temporarily until new contracts materialized. The payment for their 4-bedroom property in the valley demands nearly $3,500 monthly. My mother earns barely enough at her boutique job to manage food and electricity during prosperous weeks, but nothing beyond that. Thus, I established a recurring transfer from my personal ledger directly to their loan provider. I convinced myself it would remain brief. Later, when my brother desired a luxury sedan for his real estate gig with ruined credit, he begged me to guarantee the loan. He swore I would never personally cover a single cent. 4 different times. Over 2 years, he panicked, promising it was solely a temporary lapse. And rather than risk an account default, I submitted the cash. By last autumn, the system essentially memorized my credentials whenever his portfolio surfaced. Meanwhile, my mother demanded I never discuss these arrangements with my siblings to avoid unnecessary friction. Therefore, they continually viewed me as the impoverished relative, the loser leasing a garage, while my earnings secretly guaranteed my parents retained their residence, and my brother kept his fancy vehicle. After that meal, I became silent. I ignored my mother constantly, texting to finalize dates for our traditional holiday gathering. I let my father leave multiple voicemails, ignoring his claims that they were merely acting playful. My sister forwarded digital pictures from the event. The specific image featuring my empty account highlighted brightly like a viral internet joke. My finger rested near the send icon several times. Yet I offered them absolute silence. At the office, I wore my earpiece, resolved freight issues, and disregarded the vibrating screen hidden inside my desk. 10 days following the incident, my mother drafted a massive text expressing worry over my isolation, arguing relatives must never let petty grievances grow. She avoided mentioning the speech or the inheritance, or the reality that everyone chuckled while she deemed me entirely unworthy of receiving assets. Day 15. My father recorded an audio message stating they possessed an urgent real estate matter requiring discussion, but predictably, nobody uttered a single apology. Then, 3 weeks after the celebration, I rested during my meal break, tallied the data, and discovered my entire extended family had delivered 148 frantic alerts across every available platform. Texts, audio recordings, social networks, and emails. every message aggressively questioning my sudden disappearance, prying into my current activities, threatening me with severe repercussions. They were fully panicking, yet they remained completely blind to the foundational truth beneath everything. The sole reason their world avoided absolute ruin years prior sat inside a gray partition, wearing a plastic lanyard, struggling immensely to suppress nausea from pure rage and deep vindication, whenever another aggressive demand vibrated and remained neglected. Once the calendar reached the first day of the following month, the 3 conversations I initiated from my apartment finally materialized into their reality. The scheduled transfer I continuously wired to my parents for 72 months failed completely since I had revoked authorization. And rather than seamlessly bridging the deficit as usual, the institution attempted pulling from my father and his depleted funds, triggered an overdraft, creating an immediate penalty notice. My mother flooded my device with messages that dawned claiming something broke within our automatic billing as if she owned it, demanding whether the lender caused an error. My father, who consistently avoids speaking to support agents, screamed into a recording furious about corporate bankers running scams. I understood precisely what occurred. I had waited patiently with the loan servicer while the waiter boxed my untouched dinner, listened as the agent verified my identity and the final digits of the funding source, then instructed her to delete my credentials entirely and terminate the agreement. She appeared genuinely shocked that I funded the property instead of the actual deed holders, and professionally warned me that lacking replacement details, the upcoming cycle would certainly fail. I expressed gratitude, disconnected the line, and dialed the vehicle financier next. During the 7th day, my father stalked me near the employee garage outside my corporate complex, right after my workday concluded. The sun had set, but I easily identified his pickup resting diagonally over 2 separate spots. He blocked my tiny sedan before I could accelerate and aggressively signaled for me to lower the glass. "We must discuss the residence," he hissed, attempting to mask his anger as colleagues strolled nearby. I stated I needed to leave immediately, which was entirely false. I possessed absolutely zero plans that evening other than escaping his presence. He slammed his palms onto my hood, demanding why the bank representatives claimed the recurring transaction was manually terminated. I politely reiterated that I personally built the transfer and I possess full authority to dismantle it. His jaw literally dropped and shut repeatedly like a suffocating bass before he managed to speak. "You are forbidden from doing this," he sputtered. "We completely relied on your income." I questioned if he recalled his exact phrasing during my celebration when he raised his liquor above my dessert. His gaze instantly darted sideways. He mumbled a weak excuse about simply providing necessary motivation. I shifted my transmission backward and replied, "The bankers just provided his motivation as well," then reversed away while he loudly screamed my name. Later that evening, my brother finally connected the missing dots. He dialed from his townhouse, screaming loudly, before I even offered a greeting. "Did you cut off my automobile payments?" he aggressively interrogated. Throughout the past 24 months, whenever he missed deadlines, I logged in and ensured the balance settled before mid-month. Those 3 specific conversations following my party involved the vehicle dealership not merely questioning the default process, but officially stating I refuse to approve future debits. The specialist on the phone clarified that should the main client remain unpaid, the profile enters default, the property gets repossessed, and both our financial ratings suffer immense damage. "You are destroying both our lives merely to establish a pathetic boundary," my brother yelled, panting heavily into the receiver. I asked whether he recalled our sister displaying my empty checking account to everyone, whether he remembered cackling when our mother predicted I would squander family wealth, whether he recalled tapping his drink when our dad celebrated my total failure. He insisted everyone was merely teasing, claiming I acted hypersensitive, arguing that relatives always banter aggressively. I promised him that starting this precise moment, he would finally discover how society treats a completely independent adult. Then I ended the call before he could manipulate the narrative. 48 hours later, entering my workplace, I observed through the glass atrium as a recovery crew chained his luxury sedan in the guest area where he parked, hoping to ambush me. He stood there, wearing a tailored suit, screaming frantically into his mobile device, while numerous associates stared silently from the pavement. A security officer moved between us as I neared fully prepared following my previous alert that aggressive relatives might invade the premises. My brother noticed me, jabbed his finger, and roared that I caused this disaster, but I merely displayed my identification, entered the building, and settled at my workstation, realizing that for the first occasion since endorsing his paperwork, the heavy burden of his terrible decisions finally crashed directly onto his shoulders. The week following the repossession of my brother's sedan, my existence inside the garage apartment began feeling less like a sanctuary and more like a prison, keeping me easily accessible to relatives who happily abused me as their personal cash machine. Thus, I tapped on the main house door, informing Arthur, my property owner, that I intended to vacate by the 15th of next month. We maintained a flexible monthly agreement for quite some time. He is a retired military veteran who leases the converted garage to afford luxuries, and when I cited career changes for leaving, he merely requested an exact departure timeline. He even volunteered to draft a glowing recommendation for any future applications. I returned to my room and purchased 21 days at a corporate suite across the district, utilizing funds hidden inside a digital vault. My relatives never discovered roughly $18,000 accumulated patiently over 3 years by existing frugally while wiring them my primary wages. The actual relocation happened incredibly fast. Everything I possess fits inside the trunk of my compact sedan, 2 duffel bags, 3 storage totes, and a used desk. I abandoned a small mirror for the next occupant. By the time my mother realized I disappeared, it was because she traveled there to demand answers face-to-face regarding her massive new banking penalties. Arthur messaged me later that afternoon, explaining a furious lady arrived, demanding my presence, claiming maternal rights, and when he confirmed my vacancy, she aggressively demanded forwarding addresses, new contact info, and even attempted barging past him toward my old door. He firmly informed her he never distributes former resident data not due to personal loyalty, but simply because his professional standards forbid such actions. My mother reacted by blasting me with rapid texts, labeling me heartless, arrogant, unappreciative, and commanding I clarify exactly how I sabotaged their finances. My aunt began dialing from her bakery between serving customers, recording messages, claiming I deliberately ruined my parents' lives. When I ignored the calls, she typed a paragraph stating her daughter Jessica, the precise relative praised at my dinner, as the ultimate success was horrified I dared abandon blood relations. I captured a digital image spanning 6 years of consecutive outgoing wires from my portal, the specific transactions tagged with my parents' identities and their lender, the massive figures listed row by row, and forwarded it straight to Jessica without any explanation. 60 minutes later, she replied asking, "Is this actually legitimate?" I instructed her to question both our mothers. My sister eventually ambushed me physically inside a supermarket near my corporate park. I purposefully parked blocks away from my job, avoiding my father, but while grabbing fresh produce, I recognized my name and pivoted to spot her holding a plastic basket, showing massive bags under her eyes. "We must speak right now," she insisted, wedging her buggy against mine. I attempted walking past her. She shadowed me. "Do you comprehend the damage you are causing?" "Mom," she pleaded. "She never sleeps. Dad appears physically ill, they will probably lose the entire estate. I asked her if she still saved the picture she snapped of my financial ruin during my celebration meal. Her cheeks reddened instantly. She attempted explaining that evening was merely an intervention designed to motivate my success. I retrieved my mobile device, launched my banking ledger, and positioned the screen privately for her viewing. Endless years of scheduled drafts, all those massive cash exits she never previously cared to investigate. She gazed silently for so long the overhead retail playlist cycled completely before whispering, "Why did nobody ever inform us?" I commanded her to return home and demand answers, to examine every single luxury item our parents purchased recently, and recognize exactly whose labor actually funded those treats. She refused to trail me toward the checkout lanes. That same evening, my mother dialed, shrieking that I possessed zero authority to expose confidential monetary agreements to my siblings, claiming I deliberately poisoned their minds. Yet whenever she launched another vicious insult, all I remembered was her tone hovering above my dessert, convincing a crowded restaurant that leaving me assets meant total waste. And finally, I refused to let her volume overpower my internal clarity. Holiday week struck like a hurricane, blasting violently in one specific direction, directly targeting my personal cell, my inbox, and my corporate extension. My mother transmitted a message from an account strictly reserved for retail discounts, drafting endless pages, insisting blood relations must always pardon offenses. Claiming she raised me beyond harboring resentment over basic humor, describing my dad hunched over the dining room table past midnight, analyzing invoices in pure despair, and detailing how the lender initiated procedures, guaranteeing total destruction of their lifelong achievements. My dad sent texts admitting his behavior crossed acceptable boundaries, blaming heavy alcohol in business, anxiety, and swearing his cruel remarks regarding my absolute failure were entirely fabricated. However, his pathetic attempt at remorse quickly shifted into desperate declarations stating, "You understand we desperately require your cash today." My brother attempted invading my workplace exterior once again right after the holidays. On this occasion, building patrol acted without my prompt. They marched onto the concrete path where he paced aggressively on his mobile, and strictly banned him from lingering. When he gestured toward me behind the windows, shouting, "That is my flesh and blood," the guards physically blocked his view, regardless. Shortly after, he messaged arguing that storming my employer was his sole method to force accountability. He typed, if I genuinely planned to desert the family, I owed them a face-to-face conversation. I had previously warned my department manager that severe domestic drama might bleed into the exterior zones, and she confidentially assured me, assuming my productivity remained high, the corporation firmly supported my safety. Amidst this absolute chaos, my colleague Rachel gently placed a steaming beverage onto my workspace one morning, checking discreetly on my mental state without interrogating me. I revealed significantly more than intended regarding the disastrous meal, the endless funding, and the decisive cancellations executed that dark night. She never accused me of dramatic overreactions. She refrained from recommending peace talks with the exact individuals who recently destroyed my dignity. She posed a completely different inquiry entirely. Assuming these people lacked a biological connection, would you ever accept this abuse? Upon my negative response, she described a permanent telecommute role her associate highlighted at a financial software firm located multiple time zones away. Superior salary, vastly improved promotional opportunities. She emailed the official posting and stayed beside me during break hours, helping me completely overhaul my professional portfolio over the subsequent days. Trapped between furious notifications regarding eviction warnings and manipulative guilt trips concerning destroyed holidays, I completed 3 virtual interviews from the tiny table inside my rented suite, balancing my computer atop a pile of delivery flyers while my relatives celebrated their winter traditions, entirely without my presence. I tackled complex questions regarding logistics errors and data organization while displaying a blank wall on my camera feed. When my aunt dialed on holiday eve, expressing deep embarrassment over my actions, insisting I possessed incredible talent, but squandered it tracking boxes from a gray partition, I nearly chuckled aloud, not due to genuine humor, but because she mindlessly recited the classic narrative regarding my failed potential, right as the undeniable product of that very career. My reliable yet boring paycheck proved to be the exclusive factor keeping her sibling inside a mansion entirely, sustained by my endless sacrifice. I calmly informed her that across 72 months, I wired exceeding $70,000 to my parents, that my brother's seized luxury sedan carried my legal signature, that whenever my mother showcased fresh electronics or my father boasted regarding tropical vacations, my credit limits actually enabled their extravagant spending. The phone line went completely dead quiet. Then she muttered, "Well, withholding that detail hardly justifies your betrayal." That exact evening, while the suite's cheap blinds allowed neon glows from neighboring holiday displays to enter my room, I clicked a message titled "Official Proposal," and for the very first time I viewed a salary figure perfectly reflecting the immense dedication I continuously surrendered to my employers. The contractual document carried a midwinter date. The starting pay hit $75,000 annually, entirely remote, headquartered up north within a metropolis I only witnessed through movies. I inhaled, deeply executed the digital signature, and glared at the success notification until my screen illuminated, suddenly showing my brother's caller ID. I failed to identify the digits initially since he utilized an associate's device. "We must gather immediately to repair this damage," he demanded before my greeting, his tone incredibly strained. The property, our parents, this entire situation crossed the absolute limit. I asked him precisely which aspect he expected me to magically resolve. He accused me of immense stubbornness, clinging desperately to a single unpleasant evening and exploiting it to completely abandon my rightful obligations. I forcefully reminded him those supposed obligations never legitimately belonged on my shoulders, that absolutely nobody owned rights to my wages, especially not the exact crowd, eagerly queuing to publicly humiliate my empty savings. As he began listing every instance our parents provided basic shelter, I challenged him to name one single occasion where their massive support actually included showing me basic human dignity during public gatherings. He remained utterly speechless. He simply pivoted endlessly around his primary argument that our relatives faced total collapse, and I purposely allowed the destruction. I stated clearly I accepted a lucrative position and planned relocating multiple regions away prior to February. He screamed, demanding locations, arguing blood relations hold inherent rights to valid contact info. I replied smoothly that the primary objective of this relocation guaranteed they could never ambush my office lobby or private residence ever again. He labeled me completely soulless. I questioned whether displaying my private banking disaster to an entire restaurant crowd represented true kindness. And remarkably, he lacked any sarcastic rebuttal. My mother launched her final desperate offensive the following morning. She dialed, and when the machine recorded her audio, she dispatched a final message declaring her begging finished, insisting if I ignored her demand, I forever lost my family status. As if I somehow missed that exact ruling woven into every syllable she projected above my birthday dessert. My father attempted one deeply manipulative text, claiming immense financial anxiety triggered his cruel monologue, whining that surrendering the property would absolutely destroy his soul. I visualized countless evenings experiencing severe chest pains after transferring cash crucial for my basic survival, remembering how absolutely nobody ever deemed my massive panic worth acknowledging. Then I accessed my device configurations and permanently blocked all their contacts, including my aunt, my cousins, and definitely my entire sibling group. I restricted their profiles digitally, programming their incoming emails directly toward a trash bin I never check. 8 weeks onward, after settling inside a simple yet spotless single-bedroom unit within a snowy metropolis where 0 locals recognize my face, an old hometown associate forwarded a brief update. Your parents' large estate just appeared on a foreclosure board. The lending institution accelerated procedures drastically faster than I predicted. Lacking my hidden subsidies to mask their massive deficits, the late fees multiplied endlessly, and the legal seizure completed swiftly. The property auctioned far below their massive debt, leaving my parents completely empty-handed, carrying a catastrophic financial penalty haunting them for decades. My brother, heavily penalized by his luxury car seizure, discovered property managers utterly unwilling to approve leases without massive upfront cash. My sister completely emptied her minor reserve funds, desperately squeezing our parents into a mediocre apartment, only to discover she lacked the income to sustain them long term. My aunt's bakery patrons, who suffered years of boasting regarding successful nephews and daughters owning multiple southern properties, currently share hushed rumors over fresh pastries regarding elders who drained one specific child dry, while publicly branding her an utter disappointment. Whenever I visualize them currently, I imagine a dark residence displaying a real estate lockbox, an address serving for years as the ultimate trophy of their fake success, completely reduced to a minor statistic on a corporate spreadsheet. And I constantly ponder the precise question I desperately needed years prior: exactly what do you owe relatives who strictly cherish the version of you guaranteeing their endless luxury? I rarely feel victorious regarding their immense losses, but I possess something they completely denied me: true tranquility. They wasted decades constantly labeling me their ultimate failure. It appears the actual tragedy involved, how rapidly their entire universe shattered the exact second that profound failure finally prioritized her own survival. Confirmed the lender commenced property seizure activities. Is this legitimate? I verified their delinquent status, noting the financier undoubtedly mailed warnings following 30 late days. She answered, "She tells the entire town. You deliberately sabotaged them." I questioned whether my mother additionally informed the masses that I strictly funded their massive loan for years. She typed an ellipsis, then stated no, she conveniently omitted those details completely. During that very same week, my brother Mark invaded my corporate complex again. On this attempt, patrols intercepted him prior to accessing the lobby, since administration documented his previous meltdown near the vehicles. He messaged me later, branding me completely pathetic for utilizing armed guards, heavily implying that enforcing strict professional boundaries represented vicious familial treason. My sister Chloe, completely silent following our grocery aisle dispute, eventually initiated contact, utilizing a significantly gentler approach, begging for a quick meeting at a cafe near the shopping district. I accepted, primarily driven by sheer curiosity regarding whatever fabricated narrative my parents currently peddled to save face. She arrived appearing absolutely exhausted, purchased coffee with trembling fingers, and blurted, "They will definitely lose the property." Receiving another legal threat, hearing Dad actively discussing filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy, insisting repeatedly if I simply pardoned their mistakes and resumed regular transfers, they might repair everything. I directly challenged if she honestly considered the optimal remedy for endless years of severe verbal abuse involved me silently handing my wages back to the exact bullies who mercilessly mocked my empty ledger. She avoided answering directly, merely whimpering, "I genuinely lack alternative solutions." And therein lies the fundamental problem. They absolutely never contemplated modifying their extravagant habits, liquidating assets, moving somewhere smaller, or demanding the successful offspring actually contribute cash. Within their delusions, the singular viable remedy involved reconstructing the exact same hidden financial pipeline, stretching from my bank into theirs. The final corporate interview I desperately awaited transformed into an official contract a week later, a virtual client success role, handling financial platforms headquartered up north, providing nearly twice the income I earned within the logistics department. It completely felt like someone forcefully shattered a window inside a suffocating vault. I enthusiastically accepted, submitted my standard resignation letter, and immediately began hunting for housing, not merely across the district, but deep into distant territories. Assuming my toxic relatives could effortlessly stalk my office and my hotel room, I quickly understood the sole effective barrier required massive geographic miles, preventing casual road trips entirely. Therefore, I targeted a frozen metropolis, completely lacking familiar faces, avoiding areas hosting extended relatives, and secretly orchestrated a massive departure they remained entirely blind to until my physical absence was permanent. Once January finally arrived, the severe financial penalties my relatives evaded for decades aggressively caught up and utterly crushed their fake stability. My parents officially opened legal documents from their lender in late winter, establishing an unavoidable schedule for property auction. They officially entered complete default. The extreme surcharges and massive fines multiplied so rapidly, maintaining the illusion of a temporary cash flow issue became mathematically impossible. Their massive credit limits heavily utilized as an endless secondary salary throughout my entire childhood, completely maxed out, forcing major accounts into permanent closure. My dad's boutique landscaping operation, heavily reliant on casual referrals and undocumented cash payments, permanently lost his largest commercial contract after confessing he absolutely lacked the capital for basic supplies. My mom's minor boutique shifts barely afforded basic pantry staples. Mark relied on expensive taxis, reaching his real estate office because his luxury sedan, the exact vehicle I backed, currently rested inside an impound yard miles away, displaying a massive neon auction tag across the glass. His personal financial rating plummeted so violently following the total seizure that legally securing a basic studio lease represented a brutal uphill war. Chloe found herself trapped operating as a free taxi service between her shifts, desperately balancing her independent debts against the relentless begging from our parents, demanding she absorb temporary costs onto her plastic, assuring her it merely bridged temporary gaps. My Aunt Brenda, after viewing my massive digital ledgers directly and comprehending the absurd fortune I bled into their mortgage over 72 months, silently abandoned. Her role as their primary champion, actively dodging my mother's panicked dials, causing incredible hysteria. Amidst this total family meltdown, I calmly sealed shipping boxes inside my corporate suite, marking them for a snowy territory. Absolutely nobody suspected executing a digital rental agreement for a quiet, single-bedroom flat nestled within the Denver suburbs, fitting effortlessly into my upgraded remote salary. I initiated my fresh career right as February began temporarily existing, out of duffel bags and storage totes, mastering proprietary systems and introducing myself to virtual colleagues who absolutely never encountered my family history, entirely uncaring whether my cousin bought real estate or my brother briefly operated a fancy sedan. Within this pristine environment, their endless criticisms finally fell, permanently silent. 7 days preceding my departure, my father launched one final offensive messaging via an unknown device, since I restricted his primary line, stating, "We acknowledge our severe cruelty during the meal crossing major lines, but you remain our flesh. We must physically convene and draft a strategy. We cannot survive this disaster without your cash." His exact phrasing, demanding my presence, revealed absolutely everything regarding his distorted perception, viewing me entirely lacking independent humanity, simply functioning as an automated emergency fund that audaciously decided to permanently close. My mother drafted a massive email whining about their entire legacy tied to that valley property, claiming elder citizens should absolutely never face street living, crying about profound insomnia, visualizing foreign buyers touring her precious custom kitchen, absolutely refusing to acknowledge I survived mere inches from brutal eviction for countless years, entirely due to their extreme greed. Ignoring the endless nights I stared at my garage ceiling, panicking over stretching $20 meager for 2 weeks of rations simply because I foolishly surrendered $1,000 to their endless void. I reviewed these pathetic messages exactly once before dragging them into a hidden digital folder labeled Pure Evidence, anticipating their inevitable future attempts at aggressively rewriting historical facts. During the specific morning I permanently abandoned Ohio, my tiny sedan loaded so completely my rear visibility ceased to exist entirely. I powered my mobile device down completely for countless hours. When I eventually restored the power near a remote fueling station deep inside Kansas, fresh alerts flooded the screen, massive missed calls, desperate texts, pathetic begging, but I simply swiped them away forever. 4 weeks afterward, relaxing inside my bright yet tiny living space, situated in Colorado, admiring the vintage decor, I personally selected reviewing a massive savings account utterly free from draining into a toxic relative's estate. I received one ultimate summary from a distant cousin maintaining digital contact. My parents officially forfeited the residence. The lending agency forced an immediate public sale. They reluctantly relocated into a tiny dual-bedroom flat located within a rough urban district, spending practically identical amounts on basic rent as their previous massive loan demanded, strictly because they arrogantly delayed downsizing too long. Most of their beloved luxury items, the massive leather sofas, the expensive outdoor kitchen, the premium leather purses my mother constantly flaunted digitally, were desperately liquidated, piece by piece, attempting to simply cover basic relocation fees and severe utility debts. Mark and Chloe found themselves completely abandoned, operating independently with elders utterly incapable of guaranteeing loans, unable to float emergency cash, entirely stripped of their fake invincible wealthy persona they arrogantly projected for decades. Briefly, I debated whether harboring immense guilt over witnessing this total destruction from multiple time zones away was necessary. Yet immediately I recalled my mother's harsh tone declaring, "We claim you manage logistics since it absolutely sounds superior to tracking boxes." Or my father violently cackling, raising his glass to Sarah, our most catastrophic failure, while crystal tapped loudly above my skull, and any lingering remorse instantly vanished, transforming directly into icy, unshakable resolve. Because here lies the brutal lesson I absorbed through sheer agony and the absolute soul message I genuinely want listeners retaining forever. Shared genetics absolutely never grant permanent, unlimited access to your personal labor or your private wealth. If relatives continuously demonstrate they strictly value your financial utility, while heavily disrespecting your actual humanity, walking away permanently is absolutely not cruelty. It represents mandatory self-preservation. My parents actively elected to publicly humiliate and relentlessly degrade the exact child, silently subsidizing their completely fake, luxurious existence. They overwhelmingly prioritized arrogant pride and shallow optics far above basic honesty or fundamental gratitude. And ultimately, when the cash completely dried up, the massive estate, the luxury sedans, the entire fraudulent image entirely shattered alongside it, they ended up possessing exactly what their actions earned simply each other, a mountain of severe debts, lacking a silent scapegoat to fund them, and the agonizing realization that the specific woman they branded a total failure successfully constructed an incredible life entirely without their presence, and finally, miraculously, refused to ever apologize for prioritizing her own survival.